In the quiet coastal town of Port Haven, located in the southwest of England, there lived a little girl named Emily Brighton. Her home was an old two-story cottage with a tiled roof and ivy-covered walls perched on a hill overlooking the sea. Emily was no ordinary child. At just 6 years old, she possessed a rare wisdom that sometimes appears in children who grow up near the vast ocean. Her father, James Brighton, was the captain of a merchant ship and often went on long voyages. His strong build and confident walk showed his experience as a sailor, while his gray-green eyes always radiated kindness and wisdom. His clothes carried the unmistakable scent of the sea mixed with the aroma of his favorite pipe tobacco. Emily's mother, Grace, was an artist who painted seascapes and sold them to tourists at the local gallery. Her gentle hands were always smudged with paint, and brushes often got tangled in her hair. The family's life was peaceful and steady. When James was at sea, Emily helped her mother in the small art studio on the first floor of their home. She loved watching Grace mix paints to capture the different shades of the sea. At various times of the day, in the evenings, they would walk along the shore together, collecting seashells and listening to the cries of seagulls. In the backyard of their house stood a huge apple tree, which was Emily's favorite spot. She could spend hours sitting under it, reading books or watching the clouds in spring. The tree welcomed us for stories, where the line between the known and the unknown fades, and the shadows whisper truths untold. Tonight, we delve into the primal connection between humans and animals, a bond forged in trust, sometimes fear, and always in mystery. Bloomed with delicate pink flowers, and in autumn it bore juicy red apples, which Grace used to bake delicious pies each time her father returned home. It was a celebration. Emily was always the first to spot his figure on the road leading from the port. She would run to meet him, and he would lift her into his arms, twirl her around, and toss her into the air just as he had when she was little. Every time he brought her a special gift from a far away place. On the memorable day when everything began, the weather was cool and autumnal. The sea was restless, with waves crashing loudly against the coastal cliffs. Emily was waiting for her father, who was due to return after a 2-month voyage to Southeast Asia. She sat on the windowsill in her room, pressing her nose to the glass and peering into the misty distance. When she finally saw her father's familiar figure, her heart raced with excitement, but something seemed different. He was walking slower than usual, carrying something carefully against his chest. Emily ran outside, forgetting to grab her coat despite the drizzling rain. Her father knelt down before her, holding a small basket covered with a dark cloth. Something inside was moving. "I found him in the port of Singapore," he said softly, lifting the cloth carefully. "A storm destroyed his nest, and he was left all alone." Inside the basket was a small raven chick, so black that his feathers shone with a bluish tint. His eyes were unusually bright and intelligent for such a young bird. He tilted his head, looking at Emily, and let out a soft, cooing sound. "This is a very special bird," her father explained. "The local sailors say he's a sacred raven from the island of Borneo. They believe these ravens have incredible intelligence and can become loyal friends to those who care for them." Emily was enchanted. She had never seen such a beautiful bird before. The raven chick seemed equally curious about her. He hopped onto the edge of the basket and stretched toward her hand. "What shall we name him?" she asked, gently stroking the chick's head. "That's your decision." Her father smiled. "But remember, having such a friend is a big responsibility. You'll need to take care of him, feed him, and protect him." After much thought, Emily named the raven Shadow for his jet black feathers and his silent movements. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Every morning she woke up earlier than usual to feed Shadow fresh fruits and special food her father had brought from a pet store. The raven grew surprisingly fast and showed extraordinary intelligence. He quickly learned to respond to his name, fetch small objects on command, and even tried to mimic some of the words Emily said. He was especially fascinated by shiny things, collecting and bringing them to Emily as if sharing treasures. At first, Grace worried about having a raven in the house, but Shadow turned out to be remarkably clean and well-behaved. He never made noise at night, didn't damage the furniture, and even helped Emily pick up fallen pencils and brushes in her mother's studio. When Shadow became strong enough to fly, Emily began letting him out into the garden. She feared he might fly away forever, but the raven always returned. Sometimes he brought her unusual finds, beautiful feathers, colorful pebbles from the beach, or bright autumn leaves. A special bond developed between Emily and Shadow. The raven seemed to understand her moods without words. When she felt sad about her father's departure, Shadow would sit beside her, gently touching her hand with his beak as if to comfort her. When she was happy, he would circle above her, performing intricate aerial tricks. But one day something happened that changed the Brighton family's lives forever. It was a warm September day, and Emily was reading a book under her favorite apple tree. Shadow was napping on a low branch, occasionally glancing at his little owner. Suddenly Emily reached for a fallen apple, took a bite, and began coughing in violently. The apple had lodged in her throat, and she couldn't breathe or call for help. Shadow instantly realized something was wrong. He began to loudly and flying frantically between the tree and the house, trying to get Grace's attention. When her parents finally ran into the garden, Emily had already lost consciousness. They rushed her to the hospital, unaware that Shadow was trying to follow their car. At the hospital doctors, when the priest began the service, the raven suddenly flew inside and landed on the edge of the coffin. Before anyone could stop him, Shadow started behaving strangely. He hopped around Emily's head, making distressed sounds, and then gently pecked at her cheek and neck. Her parents were horrified, but something about the raven's behavior made them freeze. And then a miracle happened. The small apple lodged in Emily's throat popped out moments later. The girl opened her eyes and took a deep breath. She was alive, having been in a state resembling a coma due to severe oxygen deprivation. Her parents' joy was immeasurable. They hugged and kissed their daughter, unable to believe what had happened. Shadow stood nearby proudly, a pride as if he understood he had just fulfilled his most important mission. The raven had known all along that his little owner was alive and never gave up until he saved her. The story of Emily and Shadow spread throughout Port Haven. The townspeople began treating the raven with great respect, and the local newspaper published an article about the extraordinary friendship between the girl and her bird. Even the skeptical doctors admitted that without the raven's persistence, they would never have discovered the true cause of Emily's condition. After this event, the bond between Emily and Shadow grew even stronger. The raven became her constant companion, following her to school, waiting for her on the playground during classes, and walking with her along the seashore afterward. People often stopped to watch the unusual pair, the little girl and the majestic black raven who guarded her like a loyal knight. Grace painted a series of pictures depicting Emily and Shadow in different moments, reading together under the apple tree, walking on the beach, watching the sunset. These paintings became the most popular in her gallery, and even a few museums showed interest in them. James, inspired by his daughter's story, began collecting legends and tales about extraordinary birds from around the world. During his voyages, he recorded sailors and locals' accounts of similar cases of remarkable loyalty in animals. Shadow lived an exceptionally long life for a raven, nearly 25 years. Throughout that time, he remained Emily's devoted friend, sharing in her joys and sorrows as she grew up. When his time came to pass, he chose their special place, the old apple tree in the garden. By then, Emily was a young woman. She buried him under the tree and planted a bush of black roses nearby in memory of her extraordinary friend. The story of Emily and Shadow became a local legend told to children in Port Haven as a reminder that true friendship and love can work miracles. Every year on the day Shadow saved Emily, the town's people bring flowers and treats for the ravens, who seem to have a special fondness for that spot on clear days. Some claim to see a blackbird perched on the tree branches watching over the children playing below, just as Shadow once did. Remember, the next time you hear the rustle of leaves or feel unseen eyes watching, it could be more than just your imagination.